Hey, I wanted to talk about some form of toxicity I've seen happening in leadership that can be sometimes deceptive and how you might be able to deal with it, and specifically how leaders handle feedback. So I'm hoping this kind of short video helps not only leaders understand how to better receive feedback and action on it, and also help those who are on their teams kind of see some of the signs and maybe even help their leaders level up a bit if you're struggling with this. So first off, feedback can be hard, just to acknowledge that. No one really likes to get feedback. It never feels that good. It is something that I think we all just kind of need to accept that is going to maybe immediately make you feel defensive. And that's okay. But the way you really to accept feedback is to first acknowledge it, thank the person for it, and then outside of that kind of emotional state, think about what to do with it. Whether you agree with the feedback, how you could action the feedback. Just because you receive feedback from someone doesn't mean you necessarily have to do anything with it. It's really up to you to decide how to action that feedback and move it forward. And then hopefully let the person know kind of what you did with it, right? If you decide to make changes, how you made those changes, or if you didn't, to kind of let them know some of your thinking and maybe get some further feedback. So if you're a leader, I definitely recommend really trying to work on being grateful for feedback immediately, listening, then taking a beat and on your own thinking through what to do with the feedback. And if you're experiencing a leader that you feel like struggles with feedback or you don't feel like is really listening to you, I think there's some simple strategies that you can use to better communicate with that person and the person on your team, honestly. First off, and this sounds kind of obvious, be transparent about how you're feeling. Often when I talk to people, they're like, oh, I haven't even talked to the person about my feelings. And I get that that can be a little bit scary, and maybe you worry about how this person will react or treat you. And that's maybe fair. But the truth is, if you can't have kind of a basic conversation with your leader or your manager about how they're interacting with you with feedback, then you've probably got deeper issues you need to think about in your job and what you maybe should do going forward. Once you kind of have had that conversation, if you didn't go super well or maybe as well as you thought it would be, often the next thing I recommend to people is write things down. Usually these types of conversations actually go pretty well. You sit down with someone, you give them some feedback. They handle it, maybe not great, okay, but they're like, yeah, I'll do better, and then maybe nothing changes. So writing it down can kind of give more of a document on kind of like, hey, this is what I understood from our conversation. Kind of makes it easier to hold each other accountable to what you decided would change, and then work through that more in a formalized way. And it doesn't have to be super formal, but writing it down is much better than having to think, oh, did I actually say it this way in the meeting? Or did he interpret it a way that I didn't anticipate? Where writing can make it a little bit more clear. And then the last thing I'd give is kind of like loop in other people into your decision making process or how you're thinking about things. Maybe you've got your own biases, maybe you're seeing things a little bit differently. Try to find someone that might be able to give you some unbiased advice about how to handle the situation, how to maybe move forward with this person that isn't maybe getting feedback the way you want them to, and work on it. And that's maybe the biggest thing to realize is our relationships in our teams are relationships. They take time, effort, they'll have ups and downs. That's totally okay. That's totally normal. If you're struggling on working with someone, that doesn't mean you can't ever work with that person. Like most relationships, it will take time and effort to figure out what to do and how to work well together. And I think that really does allow you to maintain more of a positive team environment if you view it not as like a failure, but as a challenge or as an opportunity to overcome with this leader or manager that you have to figure out how to work better together. And same goes for you if you're a leader. Find the ways that you can get feedback, and maybe if you don't agree with everything, showing that you change based on what your team is seeing or things could be better, it goes a really long way. And if it doesn't work, that provides some data for your team even to suggest, hey, not everything we think is right either. If that's a small bet you might be able to make and say, hey, let's make this change. I got this feedback. I'm not sure if it's right, but I'm going to trust you all and see what happens. That will give you some actual data to work with. So I'd really encourage leaders to think about how they can accept feedback, be grateful for it, kind of create that environment where transparency and trust are at the forefront of the team. And I think that will go a long way to not only being a better leader and a better team member, but it'll also really help your team level up. So I hope these tips are helpful and helps you overcome some of the toxicity I've seen in teams and with leaders that don't really listen well and accept feedback.